I'm Emma. I'll use she, her pronouns, and I know Thayer forever.
So Emma is my best friend, and yeah, we've been friends since I was 2 and she was 3.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah.
Yep.
When people first meet you, what do you hope that they say to you, or how do you hope they respond to you, or like what do you want them to think?
That's an interesting question. I think I have a service dog, so in terms of like disability, if I'm not with her, people don't necessarily realize that I'm disabled because I don't necessarily fit what people expect me to look like, unless I'm using one of my mobility aids, then they put that together. But when I do have Callie, a lot of people like come up and talk to her, which generally doesn't bother me. But I guess like I hope that people just like don't take me too seriously.
Okay.
Too much of a goober for that.
Yeah. Do you want to define goober? I've never gotten a proper definition of goober.
I don't think there is a proper definition.
Goober is one of Emma's favorite words in the entire universe.
It's one of my most
I've never gotten an actual definition of the word goober.
I think people generally fit into a category of either goober, doofus, or buffoon. But those can all be used positively or negatively. Like, if I'm trying to be nice and say that I don't like someone, I'll be like, they're just a buffoon. But, like, and I mean, like, they're awful. But sometimes I'll, like, refer it, I'll be like, what a buffoon. But, like, I'm just talking about Callie, and, like, she's just being a goofball. But
Callie is Emma's service dog.
Yes. There isn't really a definition.
Yeah.
Someone silly,
Excellent.
I guess.
Thank you for educating the world on gooberhood.
Oh, you're welcome. I hope it spreads.
Do you want to share what your diagnoses are?
Sure. There are a lot.
You're like picking up on paper.
I guess I have a couple of different categories.
Okay.
So from a like nerve issue perspective, I kind of connect amplified musculoskeletal pain syndrome, also called a lot of things, but most commonly complex regional pain syndrome. And then most impactful for me right now, functional neurological disorder, which kind of like goes with everything. I've had a lot of concussions. Cannot accurately tell you how many, but somewhere in the like 15 region, but all of them minor. And so post-concussion syndrome to go with that. And then the nice blend of concussions, trauma, and autism. I now have FND, so I have tics from it. We think I was diagnosed with Tourette's, but and then I have seizures, so non-epileptic seizures, and paralysis, which is what I'm at right now. My legs are not working, so I've got my nice wheelchair Cinderella back there.
She can say hi.
Yeah.
Oh, she's right here.
She's right here.
She's like a fun orange color.
Yeah. Awareness orange. And so sometimes my brain just kind of freaks out, so I'll either have a seizure, or after I have a seizure, my legs or my limbs, depending, will just not work for a couple days. And then, as I mentioned, I'm autistic and have a couple other neurodivergencies as well. It's kind of all work together nicely. Yeah.
Cool.
That covers most of them, at least. In general, like, I like being autistic because I'm still, since I'm recently diagnosed, like, trying to figure out who I am as an autistic person, but also, like, I don't really know who I was beforehand either because so much of it was masking that I didn't even realize I was doing. Like, I think my mom and I were talking about this the other day of, like, the way I am around a couple people, with my brother and you, actually, we were talking about, like, I think that's me, because I just never, it's a lot of it subconscious masking, but I never did around you or around William or my parents either, but, like, especially my brother. Like, that's who I am, but, like, it's different because I'm not always that way because of masking.
Right.
So trying to, like, unpack all that.
What is masking?
Masking is learned behavior to, like, fit in, I guess, with I think generally it's theoretically supposed to be with abled people, but also I think it's just, like, with the surroundings, and typically autistic, like, people who are assigned female at birth are notoriously good at it, which is why we're underdiagnosed and more likely late diagnosed, because I did not realize that everyone else wasn't doing it, and, like, I always just felt like, okay, well, this is what this person's doing, so not even just copying, but, like, trying to figure out what acceptable things were by observing rather than innately knowing. I just don't understand, like, getting social things. I just never did, but I would pick up on them enough that, like, my teachers didn't notice, my parents didn't notice. I didn't necessarily notice until my brain started freaking out at things, and I could no longer mask as an effective level, which was really strange because I got all these injuries, and all of a sudden I felt like a totally different person.
What's it like to be queer and disabled?
That's a good question. I think it's, I have a little bit of a bubble where, like, most of the people I interact with in my life are queer and or disabled. I don't know, I'm used to interacting with, like, other people with chronic pain or other people with, like, varying mobility issues, and also queer people, so it's a culture that community that other people don't understand at all.
How can people who aren't familiar with many queer people or aren't familiar with many disabled people better interact with you?
I guess the biggest thing with, especially disability, is, like, if you have a question, first Google it if you don't know the person, but also, like, if you're gonna ask something, just ask it directly and in a nice way. So you have service dogs, and they are specifically task trained to mitigate a specific handler's disability, and that can be all sorts of different things, but they have to be task trained for the disability, and also well behaved in public, and public access trained, where that they're not wreaking havoc in public.
Yeah.
And there's some places I've seen therapy dogs labeled as service dogs because they were trained by a service dog training company. Just because they were trained by a service dog training company, if they're not performing as a service dog, they're not a service dog.
Right.
They're a very well-behaved dog, or they can be a therapy dog, but they're not a service dog.
Yeah.
So I do have, especially when I'm, like, up and walking with Callie, like, sometimes people will essentially be like, what's wrong with you that you have a service dog? Like, what, you know, or they'll ask, like, what are your disabilities? Where I'm like, this is the gas station. I don't know why you need to know that. That is a direct exact example. And then, like, if I tell them, I try to say it, like, I was just like, I have multiple neurological conditions. Because, like, then they get uncomfortable. Like, you asked. If you're curious, that's fine. I understand that. I get curious too. But if you're going to ask something, ask respectfully and just directly. And I guess just realize that there are a lot more disabled people than people necessarily, like, abled people necessarily realize, because they just, you see from your perspective, and so you don't necessarily realize that someone who's young or, is walking at a brisk pace could be having different issues.
Yeah.
So, like, don't stare or take pictures or talk to service dogs. Obviously, that should be common knowledge, but it isn't sometimes.
Why is that unhelpful?
Because it can distract them, and in general, the service dogs, like, if they're properly trained, they will ignore it and move on. But even if the split second of that can be harmful to the handler, where for me, Callie's alerts are not life-threatening. It could be rather inconvenient, but if she misses one, I won't be necessarily quite harmed by it, but there are people who will, and people who can and have, like, died from that kind of thing. So that's bad. I also, like, it's just rude. I had somebody trying to talk to Callie and pet Callie, who she was ignoring because she's finishing up her training, but in general, like, she's great. But she was ignoring this guy, and he was trying so hard to get to her attention that he walked into a display of shovels and knocked them over, and then tried to leave without picking them up. And then he only picked them up because I was picking them up when he turned around because he realized he forgot something. I was like, I just want my booster shot. What are you doing?
That's so funny.
Yeah, and I think I forget that, like, when I interact with people, that they can be or might be, like, straight. And I think they think that about me, too. Like, I just don't realize. So, like, obviously it benefits everybody to use gender-inclusive language and just inclusive language of, like, instead of saying your mom and dad, say your parents. Like, things that are, like, just recognizing that people have different situations.
Yeah.
It benefits everyone. So queerness and disability is a positive. I would say most of the time, because it provides community in a way that I wouldn't necessarily otherwise have. Because I think, especially now, I'm realizing, like, a lot of my friends are not neurotypical, and, like, that it's so much easier to communicate with people especially who have brains that work like yours. So, like, it's so nice to know that and to, like, be able to connect over it, or, like, if I'm going somewhere that I know is going to be overstimulating, in my backpack I always have, like, a bunch of earplugs and headphones and fidget things, and so, like, I just went on this trip with my school, and so I had one of the, like, wacky track things, and I split it into, I think, 4 little squares, so, like, a whole bunch of us had it and we're playing with it, and it's just, like, such a nice feeling of, like, understanding and community when other people know what you're dealing with.
Yeah. And when other people just get it without you needing to explain and needing to advocate for, like, oh, I'm using this fidget thing because it helps me focus, or, like, whatever.
Right.
They just get it. Yeah.
Right, where I'm like, I am listening, I'm just not looking at you, or, like, I am paying attention, I'm not playing with this toy, like, I'm using this tool in a way where I'm not distracted by it, like, it's helping me. And queerness, like I said, a lot of my friends are queer, and, like, again, that's, like, such a good community, and as soon as you know that someone else is in that too, it's, like, a sense of, like, connection with them.
Yeah,
and,
like, oh, you get it, you know what it's like. Yeah. What does Callie do for you?
A lot of things. I guess she's got her tasks, like, her official things that she's trained to do, and then also just things that she does. So, like, other than you, she's my best friend. And
I was gonna say, excuse me. Actually, no, that's not true. I value dogs over all people.
Yeah. It's just obviously a different kind of best friendship.
Right. Of course.
But so she lives with me at school. It's just the two of us in our dorm room, and, like, so that I always have someone, but in a, like, it's nice after different, like, medical issues, even if she wasn't trained, just to have something there is very helpful. But she is the smartest doofus you'll ever meet. She alerts to my seizures and will, like, aggressively get me out of wherever I am, which is impressive because she kind of taught herself that. Because when I first got Callie, my diagnoses were quite different, my symptoms were quite different. It was just all evolving very quickly, and so the trainer and I were just trying to keep up with what she was figuring out on her own and what I was dealing with. But for the first time at one point in my writing class, I was putting off dealing with a seizure, which doesn't go well for me, but I do it anyway because I have little to no rational thinking before a seizure, which is quite convenient, as you might imagine. But she was, like, staring at me, and then, like, as soon as I'd make eye contact with her, she'd look at the door, and it was, like, it was freaking me out a little bit. She kept standing up and shaking and, like, being not exactly disruptive, but, like, repeatedly getting up. Every time I would shift in my seat, she'd be like, good, we're leaving. We were in that class all the time, so I didn't know what was happening. But eventually I left. I was like, oh, I think I might be having different, I had different names for the episodes over the time, but, like, I was like, oh, I think I'm having an episode. So then I went to, like, the lounge area and did for a while. But then I was like, I wonder if she knows beforehand.
Yeah, that she can sense it's coming.
Which, it's like, it's evolved so much because now, yes, she knows. If I don't listen to her, she'll go to a couple selected people near me and will aggressively alert at them to try to get me to leave. Because, again, no rational thinking. When I stand up, she has, like, not exactly a counterbalance strap, but she has a little on the back of her vest so that I can hold her close, and she'll pull so that I can go faster, because while my legs will work, they only work before I have a seizure. They can move, well, sometimes, but they'll just give out on me if I don't get to a location fast enough. And so she'll move, because often, like, I can pick them up, but, like, I don't have enough, like, forward momentum, so she'll do the forward momentum pull and, like, get me somewhere. She has a couple different spots that she'll go to. It will try to, the one building I'm mainly in is a science building, so I have a room in there designated she will take me to, or I'll try to go back to my dorm. And sometimes she will not think that's a smart idea, so she will just, if I'm trying to walk somewhere and she doesn't like that idea, she'll just sit down. She won't let me walk. In my dorm room, I try to leave. Well, even if I don't try to leave, she knows.
Bless you, Callie.
Bless you. You're so silly.
We're talking about you. You want to come say hi?
She blocks the door. Like, she'll sit in front of the door so that I cannot leave. And then if I do try to leave, she'll look at me like, absolutely not. And she'll, hi. She'll, hi, silly. Are we talking about you? Yeah.
You want me to?
Yeah. Go say hi. Oh, here she is. She's so funny. Here, Squishy. Go. 1, 2, 3. Hop. There you go.
Nice job, Callie.
Thank you. Hi. Oh, thank you so much. Thank you.
Yay! Okay. Good job.
So she'll not let me leave, and then even if I'm not listening to her, which kind of happens a lot, I'll go to put her harness on, and she won't let me put it on. Like, she is impressive, and if I will eventually, like, grab her, get her on her, she won't leave. She's becoming relatively idiot-proof, which is impressive. She has a lot of practice, because one thing that service dogs have to learn is intelligent disobedience. My trainer is like, you're giving her too much practice at that. Just listen to your dog. Yeah. And then in between my seizures in an episode, she'll come over and check on me. And that's very helpful, especially sometimes I get, like, stuck out of my body. I don't really know how to explain it, but, like, everything freezes. My eyes will move, but I can't move them. My mouth will move, but I can't move it. Like, it goes up to, like, an hour and a half, where I just cannot move anything or have any control over it. And, like, so she'll just come over and try to snap me out of it, which sometimes works. Yeah, and then also same thing with, I can drive because I know when I'm going to have an episode. Even if I didn't have Callie, I just don't have nearly as much time. She knows way before I do. But she won't get in the car. And unless someone else is in the driver's seat, she knows what the driver's seat is and what it means. So if I get in the passenger seat, she's okay getting in, but she will not get in the car if I'm driving, if there's an issue. Even if I feel fine and she knows that there will be an issue, she'll not get in, which is really impressive. Makes me feel a lot safer about driving when she does hop right in, then I know I'm good to go. And then she'll do deep pressure therapy, and she's been alerting to high heart rate, but I don't really know what that's about, so we're trying to figure that out. She'll come over and then she'll, like, give me a hug to lower my heart rate, and then she'll be like, okay, you're good, you're done. And then, like, not task related, she helps me make friends. Like, that's just a perk of having a dog, obviously, not really service dog specific. One of the nicest things you can do for a friend with disabilities, which I didn't realize was something that would mean so much until you did it, is, like, Googling what, like, you're like, what is it called again? I'm going to Google it. And I was like, that's so nice. I just, like, learning about what other people are dealing with and so you can better understand them is, like, one of the nicest things you can do. It just means so much. So I recommend doing that.
Thank you so much for doing this with me.
Thank you.
Bye. We can also wait
That
till
was
it
a big
turns
burp.
off to,
Did you hear her big burp?
Oh, I think that was mine.
Oh.